We continue our look at the Sharks prospect pool by digging into the 2021 class. Eklund's playing well, but what about everyone else?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. We continue our 4-part series of digging into the Sharks prospects by looking at their last 4 draft classes. We already did the 2020 draft last year. Today, we're going to be focusing on the 2021 draft, which of course is highlighted by William Eklund. And then at the end, we're going to be also talking about the Barracuda goalies because I feel like this is a good time to kind of talk about these guys here as well. So before we get into this, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So the big thing with this class right now is how many guys aren't here anymore. So the Sharks had 9 selections in this class, and 3 of them, the rights have already expired, and the Sharks did not sign. So Benjamin Gaudreau, the 3rd round pick, the goalie that the Sharks they let his rights expire last offseason. Then you have Max McHugh and Liam Gilmartin. Both those guys also OHL guys who the Sharks let their rights expire last summer. The interesting thing is there's 2 more players who could be potentially, we never really see anything out of. Theo Jacobson, who the Sharks have until June 1st, 2025 to sign. We'll talk about him a little bit more. And then Evgeny Kashnikov, the Russian defenseman, who they own his rights indefinitely, but it seems like he might never come over. And we'll get to him here in a little bit. So that leaves just kind of 4 players from this draft who might actually make an impact here. So we'll start, of course, with the cream of the crop, the bell of the ball. That is one William Eklund. So, of course, Eklund, the 7th overall pick in this draft. We talked about Eklund, a little bit a couple weeks ago, but I'm never not going to talk about William Eklund. 2 years left on his deal, so he did kind of go through his first season of his ELC. 80 games this season, had 16 goals, 29 assists, 128 shots on goal, average 1840 average time on ice. Corsi 45.05, goals for 36% for Eklund this year. And I think kind of harping back to what we talked about with Eklund before is, he's really established himself as an everyday NHL player, right? But now can he take the next step? And I think this season he's going to be in a much better position to take that next step, right? He had 45 points on this team that was one of the worst teams we've seen in recent years. I'm going to continue to harp on their minus 150 goal differential until next season, probably. And even then, it'll probably be halfway through next season where I'll stop mentioning it. But that's why, again, goals for percentage, it's going to be bad for everybody. It's the same thing, plus minus, whatever you want to like. If you give up, if you're minus 150 goal differential, is bad. Doesn't matter who, everybody was a part of it. And when you play a ton of minutes, like Eklund did last season, you're going to have those type of poor numbers. But enter Will Smith, enter Macklin Celebrini. Again, we'll talk more about Mike Grier, I think, next week, and why I think he needs to be very aggressive now. We'll continue to dive into free agency and what the Sharks should or should not do in free agency. But there's more talent coming on this team really quickly. And I think Eklund is going to be one of the biggest benefactors of that, as he's going to be able to play with guys who are just as skilled as him, think the game the same way as him. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if next season we're talking about a potential 60 plus point season for William Eklund, especially if he can continue his scoring the way we saw him scoring, especially at the down the stretch. And if we look back to that, kind of month span after the All-Star break where Eklund had to play center, which I know he played center in the SHL, but since he's come over to North America, he has not played center at all. And yes, he came out of the gate strong, but after that, he really fizzled out and didn't really look like himself. But as soon as you moved him back to wing, Eklund was great again. You hope that Magnus Celebrini, you're going to put him at center. Do not move him. If Logan Couture comes back healthy, or we're going to talk tomorrow about Logan Couture insurances plans. So we'll talk tomorrow. We're going to talk much more about Couture. But if Couture is healthy, Mikael Granlund continues to play the same way. If Will Smith can slide into center, there's more options for the Sharks where you're not going to have to to put William Eklund in a position like that again this year, unless they talk to him this summer and say, we want you to play, kind of in his exit meeting saying, we want you to play center this summer, like next season, train to play center. And that's a whole different conversation. But I think William Eklund's best place is on the wing. And we saw that beginning of the season. We saw that at the very end of the season, especially going back, and he was an impact player, especially once the Lund line was put together. And I think having other talented players to play for Eklund to play with, we'll see the play continue to be great, but I think we're going to see that production from him. And I would expect Eklund to have a monster season next year and really show. Again, we saw the flashes this year of a player who at times looked like he could take over a game. But I think next year we have a monster second season from him, as he's now played a full season in the NHL. Increased talent on the roster, hopefully, with Celebrini and Smith. And maybe a new system can accentuate his skill set. So the sky's the limit for William Eklund. I cannot, as much as we're excited about Smith and Celebrini, we have every right to be excited about Smith and Celebrini coming to the Sharks. We can't forget about William Eklund, who really was that first franchise pillar piece. I think we're going to be talking about. And yes, Celebrini and Smith are exciting. They're awesome players, but Eklund's going to be just as important as he continues his development. And hand it to Quinn, right? I know Quinn, there's plenty of issues with David Quinn, and he is no longer here, but look at Eklund's development, right? Playing shorthanded. He was very good on the PK, and you can see, especially the way he thinks the game, the way he reads the game. I think Eklund is going to be a great penalty killer. Putting him on the power play, noticing like, okay, Eklund's not going. Let me put him down for a couple games on the third line. Give him a little bit easier competition. Let him kind of reset a little bit. And then once he earns that trust back, okay, let's put him back together and put him on a top line with Lund, with that Lund line. So if you want more on Eklund, I did a whole podcast on William Eklund. Again, William Eklund's awesome. I love William Eklund. As Sharks fans, let's not forget. I know we have shiny new toys, but William Eklund is freaking awesome, and he's going to continue to be awesome, especially when you add high-end pieces around William Eklund. We can hopefully maybe retire the Bugatti in the trailer park meme, as Eklund has placed with other players on the line, on his line. So, but yes, I'm very excited about Eklund and his future. And I think this season was rough. It was ugly at times, but I think Eklund showing that development, showing that patience that we saw with him playing in the AHL for a full season. Yeah, he's going to be awesome. So we'll continue. We'll look at a lot of the defensive pieces that the Sharks added. Of course, we'll talk about Ethan Cardwell, and then we'll get to the Barracuda goalies here in just 1 minute. If you want to go catch the NBA Finals, or maybe you just want to go see a Giants game or an A's game, or go catch a concert this summer, you need to check out Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. The thing I love about Game Time is their panoramic seat views, so you can actually see what your seats are going to look like. Nothing worse than getting to an event and realizing you have bad seats. Actually, the only thing worse is when you go to buy your seats, you hit go to checkout, and you get slammed with a bunch of fees. But Game Time's all-in pricing. You know exactly what you're going to pay. No surprises, no shocks. Again, they make it easy. You can buy tickets in 2 taps, have them right on your phone. They have the lowest price guarantee. If you find a seat in the same row in the same section for cheaper, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets or baseball, whatever you're trying to get tickets for on Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so William Eklund, great. We know that. He's well on his way to being a star. Who's next? Who was the next guy? And that would be one Gannon Laroque. So Lorac played this season. He split his time between the Barracuda and then the Thunder of the ECHL. Lorac still working his way back from his injury, so the games played isn't as high as you would like to see. But I think with the Sharks, they were trying to be cautious with him, not put too much on him too quickly. So with the Thunder, he played 9 games, 0 goals, 2 assists, 15 shots on goal. With the San Jose Barracuda, also played 9 games, 1 goal, 1 assist with 13 shots on goal. And I think for Lorac, this was kind of that, I don't want to say red shirt year, but a little bit of that red shirt year where they, especially coming back from hip injuries, wanting to be very cautious with their young prospect. And, so I think with Lorac, you need him to stay healthy. That's the big thing, right? You've basically lost in 2 seasons now. You've played 22 games, if my math is correct there. Not a big math guy, but I think I got that one. So for him, it's being healthy and trying to stay healthy, right? And he was starting to play healthy, stay healthy. And then at the end of the season, concussion knocks him out till some of the last couple games of the year. So it was interesting decision, though, with Lorac, where they could have sent him back to Victoria to play in the WHL as an overager, but they decided to bring him here. And I think it was maybe to kind of keep an eye on him and maybe have a little bit more firm hand on his rehab going forward. So I think for Lorac, though, next year's a big year for him to just stay healthy, right? Can we get 60, 65 games out of you in the Barracuda and be an every night type of player? Because I still think the skill's there. I think he's going to be a really solid 2-way defenseman, but your best ability is your availability, and we just haven't gotten that out of Gannon Laroque so far. So next guy, though, who I think other than Eklund, you could argue might be the best player coming out of this draft, that's Ethan Cardwell, 2021 4th-round pick, overager. So he could have been part of the 2020 draft, of course. We talked to him about this, but he thinks his development might have been best served with being patient, right? Could have played on the Barracuda last season, but went back, had a great season with Barry, and you saw it this year. 71 games played out of 72, 23 goals, 20 assists, 165 shots on goal. And Ethan Cardwell looks like he's shaping into be a very fine kind of middle six, third line type of player for the Sharks. Was playing, especially by the end of the season, was playing in all situations for the Barracuda, killing penalties on the power play, was playing in top line minutes with Philip Beested. And I would not be surprised if next year, plenty of options for the Barracuda, but I would just keep that Cardwell Beested pairing going because they were awesome. As soon as Beested arrived, those guys were great. You spend the whole summer getting some chemistry together. And I think, and hopefully eventually you just plop that on the third line for the Sharks and you were good to go right there. But Cardwell showing being patient, especially with these prospects, kind of like Eklund, patient with him as he spent the entire season in the AHL, being patient with a guy like Ethan Cardwell, and you're going to get a lot out of him. And I think Cardwell is going to continue to surprise. And I think he's going to play NHL games next year. Maybe it's after the trade deadline type of player, but you look at some of the, even comparing to the 2020 draft class guys like Ozzy Weisblatt and Brandon Coe, even Tristan Robbins, I think Cardwell is coming close to passing a lot of those guys who are his peers, right, as an overage player. I still have Gushin and Bordeaux ahead, but Cardwell's probably number 3 out of those guys, at least when it comes to his upside and his potential. And I think he's just gonna be a really solid dude for the Sharks going forward. So really excited about Cardwell and his continued development. Next would be Artem Guryev. So Guryev, just like Lorac, could have gone back to play in the OHL. Sharks brought him here, played 9 games over with the Thunder, also had 2 assists, 4 shots on goal. And then with the Barracuda, have played 31 games, 2 goals, 2 assists with 31 shots on goal. Guryev looks physical dude. He's 20, but he looks like he has a house, 3 kids, mortgage, dog, picket fence, the whole deal. Dude looks older than me. Plays violent game. And we saw that especially in the OHL. But his last year, he got traded to Flint, and you really saw his offensive game kind of take a big leap. I still think there's some issues defensively that he needs to continue to iron out. But I think he's going to be kind of a AHL, and then if you need him to play some NHL type of games, but I think his game is really suited to have a nice long career in the AHL. And that there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, not everybody can be a superstar in the NHL, but I think he's going to be a guy who's just going to kind of stick around with the organization for a long time. If you need him to come out and play some NHL games, I'm sure he'll be able to do that in a pinch. But if you want him to, kind of protect some of your stars in the AHL, he's going to be that type of guy for the Barracuda. So, but I think he, especially kind of what I saw from him in his juniors to his AHL, you see the development, still some kind of mental mistakes happen here and there, but you're seeing his development and his growth. So continue with Theo Jacobson, 6th round pick, playing over in Sweden, played 32 games in the Hockey Allsvenskan. We had 8 goals, 16 assists with 58 shots on goal. And then with the Moto in the SHL, played 11 games with 2 goals, 2 assists, and 15 shots on goal there. Not gonna lie, haven't watched much Theo Jacobson, so can't really give too much there on that. But it just be interesting to see what the Sharks do with him, especially with his rights expiring next off season. I assume he's just going to stay over in the SHL. If he has a good season in the SHL, then you potentially bring him over after that. And he's probably a bottom 6 type of forward for the Sharks, but at least he's very cost controlled when he signs his ELC. But again, there's one of those guys where you're just maybe he turns into something, maybe not. And then the final guy from that draft class, Evgeny Kashnikov, 2021 7th round pick, big dude, 6'6", been playing over in the KHL, 65 games this year, 2 goals, 4 assists, 76 shots on goal. just signed a new contract with a new team in the KHL this year. I never expect him to come over, to be honest, but just wanted to make sure we put a nice bow on the 2021 draft class. So we'll talk about the Barracuda goalies, kind of do a review of the 3 goalies this season, what's kind of next for these guys here in just 1 minute. All right. Barracuda goalies. So this year we have three goalies. All of them played in multiple leagues. They all played sometime in the ECHL. They all played on the Barracuda, and 2 of them got games in the NHL as well, making their NHL debuts. So we are actually going to start with Magnus Chrona, the 2018 fifth-round pick from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who the Sharks acquired several trade deadlines ago. With the ECHL Thunder, played 2 games, 940 save percentage, 294 goals against, 100 saves. Moving on to the Barracuda, he played 31 games, 894 save percentage, 349 goals against average, and 858 saves. And then with the Sharks, played 9 games, 859 save percentage, 471 goals against, 37 goals allowed. Expected goals allowed was 29.38, so he had a minus 7.6 goals saved above expected, and a 657 high danger save. So Chrona, developmental year, right? First year as a professional. We saw a lot of opposites. We saw a lot of downs for him. I still think he is going to be at best probably a backup for the Sharks going forward, right? I still like him. I still think he can be, either like he's not going to be a 50, 60 start type of guy, but I think he can be a 35 start type of player for the Sharks going forward. Want to see again next year where I think there'll be a little bit more clarity in net, hopefully, with Romanov and Chrona, and we'll see what the Sharks do if they try to add a third goalie into the mix there. But I think both those guys, and we'll talk about Romanov here a little bit, both those guys could just use just starts, right? And having a alternating starting pattern between those guys and kind of splitting the net is probably going to be best for them. And you hope that the Barracuda team gets a little bit better. So, but I think though you saw some flashes for him. He had some, even in the NHL, he had some games where he looked pretty solid. Did also have some stinkers for him. He did also have a couple games where the team in front of him just didn't show up, and that was a running theme of the 2023-2024 Sharks. But watching his Barracuda games, though, little bit of a stretch kind of in the middle of the season where he kind of lost it for a little bit, maybe was having some confidence issues, but he really, I think, kind of found his game after that. That's why he got promoted to the NHL. I'm glad, though, that the Sharks got Devin Cooley to send Chrona back. That way they weren't kind of having him shell shocked every night playing in the NHL, and he can kind of regain that confidence at the end of the season. So next guy on the list, Eetu Makiniemi, the 2017 4th-round pick from Carolina. The Sharks got as part of the Brent Burns trade. 3 games, 907 save percentage, 339 goals against, 97 saves with the ECHL Thunder. And then with the, did I lose this thing? Oh, sorry. Then with the Barracuda, had 18 games, 900 save percentage, 314 goals against with a 492 save percentage. Funny enough, he had 3 shutouts with the Barracuda. So when he was on, he was absolutely on for the Barracuda. But I think we will probably not see him back next season as he is a UFA because he didn't hit his kind of, he's a, what do they call it? Pulling it up right now. UFA Group 6 did not accrue the required games by the age of 25, so he becomes a UFA. And I don't see him back next season. I think it would make sense for these Sharks if they want to get a veteran type of goalie go get a Cooley, or, if you want to get like an older guy, an Aaron Dell type, not saying Aaron Dell, but an Aaron Dell type who can kind of just hang around. But you need letting Chrona and Romanov, who are both going into the final years of their deals, letting those guys really get the bulk of the starts and really try to kind of have that battle and see what happens with those. But Makiniemi is going to be one of those guys where we might be talking about what if with his injuries that just kind of continually derailed his seasons ever since he got here. So unfortunately, just never could stay healthy. And I think that's going to be the kind of the story of Eetu Makiniemi. So like I said, 3 shutouts this year, but again, just not enough healthy starts from him. So final guy, Georgi Romanov, who, of course, none of us knew this time last year, but Romanov, I think there's something there. So 7 games with the Thunder, 870 save percentage, 4 goals against, 216 saves. Nothing super impressive there, but with the Barracuda, 29 games played, 904 save percentage, 314 goals against with 761 saves. And then with the Sharks, 2 games, both in relief, 967 save percentage, 101 goals against, 1 goal allowed. Expected goals against, 3 goals saved above average, 2 high danger save percentage, 1,000. He didn't let in. Again, both those in relief where the Sharks were down multiple goals. The team kind of, the Sharks waved the white flag. But Romanov, though, I feel, especially watching him at the beginning of the season compared to at the end, hyper athletic player. And we've seen the Sharks profile, right? You look at Mackenzie Blackwood, Devin Cooley. Romanov fits that profile as a guy who needs to continue to play. I think he just needs more reps, right? Just continue to play more games. But there's something there, and he's super athletic, bit of a grinder where he's just going to keep fighting and keep fighting. It's kind of the same thing that we saw out of Magnus Chrona, where he had a little bit of a confidence issue kind of middle of the season. I think that's kind of where the Barracuda were at their lowest point, where they're just kind of getting, they're just losing a bunch of games. But bounce back strong at the end of the season, was like this close to multiple shutouts with the Barracuda. I think one game where he had like 12 seconds left and the other team scored. But Chrona, they're not Chrona, sorry, Romanov, there's something there with him that I really like. And again, that mixture of that kind of grinding attitude with that hyper athleticism. Played a full season this year, got used to it. I wouldn't be surprised if this time next year we're talking about, wow, Romanov had a monster season for the Barracuda. Maybe he earns the majority of the starts for them, and we're talking about maybe gets a couple games with the Sharks at the end of the season, a couple starts with the Sharks at the end of the season if he can continue to play well, and could be looking at a potential diamond in the rough for, again, a guy none of us knew about a year ago. So that's going to be it for me today. Like I said, we will be back tomorrow to talk about kind of Logan Couture, talk about some potential Logan Couture insurance pieces that I think the Sharks really need to do. Look at, especially with Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini going to be expected to be on the roster. Will Smith's here, guys. Macklin Celebrini is going to be here too. So that's going to be it for me today. Make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. And till tomorrow. Bye, friends.